One of the first things I did in the DLC was die to this giant fire wicker man, but if you do defeat him, I'll tell you exactly how, by the way, he holds a brand new mechanic that is a ton of fun to play around with that allows you to parry Malakath's stupid face. Let's go. Let me know any other cool stuff you found in the comments. So to defeat the big Furnace Golem, it's actually not as hard as it does initially seem. Like, when you do damage him initially, you're like, oh, that does like no damage at all. But you just kind of need to like persevere, right? And attack his legs. He only has a couple of attacks that are very easily telegraphed. Like the standard stomp, you just need to like jump over it either on foot or with torrent. And then if he jumps with 2 legs, you need to move away from him because there'll be a little like AoE explosion near him and then still jump the attack. And then like his little swings where he swings down are like super easy to avoid just by hanging around near his legs. But essentially you just need to like attack his legs and you'll hear like that stance break sound a couple of times. You need to hear it 3 times and then he'll actually break and fall to the ground. And then you can find his head and follow up for a critical hit that does way more damage than a normal critical hit would. Now, when he does fall, it is possible that you can't actually reach him just because of like the geometry of like the map. Like it happened to me that I couldn't actually like follow up with a critical hit, so I just had to keep swinging at him. But if you just like rinse repeat this process, you'll be able to defeat him pretty comfortably. He's actually not that hard. It's really that critical hit is where most of your damage will come from. So don't feel disheartened if you're just like hitting him and you're like barely whittling down his health. It's really about breaking his stance so he falls down and then following up with that critical hit. Not as bad as it does seem, but when you do actually beat them, they will drop a deflecting hard tier. Now this can be put into your Flask of Wondrous Physique. Now the main thing that this does is the damage negation and guard poise will be heightened in the moment immediately after assuming a guarding stance. Successfully executing a spontaneous guard will also strengthen guard counters. So essentially what this is it's basically a parry in like a roundabout way of saying that's what it is. So how essentially you use this is just before an attack hits you, you like guard as if you were parrying an attack, right? Now you will see like a little puff of like whitish like smoke, and it's like a tiny little like sound that plays as well when you do trigger this successfully. You'll also notice that your stamina usage from like the block will be significantly less. You'll obviously take no damage and you'll be able to follow up with a guard counter. Now you can also buff your guard counter in other ways with talismans and stuff as well. And we'll talk about like some build stuff in a little bit, but essentially like what I would do once you've put this on is like go to like an easy enemy with super easy telegraphed attacks and just practice using this and seeing the difference between like a normal block and like an actually like parried block. In like all this footage, I am using a shield, but you don't have to use a shield at all. It's like any actual guard, like any block, right? It'll do the exact same effects of negating that damage and everything. So I'm using a shield here, and I would definitely recommend to use a shield when you're sort of like learning the timings and stuff, because
missed it by that much.
If you actually miss the timing, like say you're too early, right? You're still going to block that attack. It won't trigger the parry, but you like block the attack with the shield, which, you know, if you're using a good shield, you've got that damage negation from that. You can still follow up with the guard counters and all that stuff while taking a tiny little bit of damage if you do take it or not, right? Now, the real kicker here is that you can essentially parry anything. Like I haven't actually come across something I can't parry yet. I went to Malakath and was able to parry him fine. I've been able to parry like this little blood attack that these new ogre enemies do, which is like really weird. I haven't tested it on any magic stuff yet, and I'll be curious if you can parry that stuff, if it works in the similar ways like Retaliation does or something like that. But basically everything that I've come across, I've been able to parry, and it's quite a lot of fun actually. I'm surprised at how enjoyable this is as a mechanic. It's got a very forgiving window to actually hit, and the time that this lasts, like most of your Flask of Wondrous Physique buffs last like 30 to 60 seconds or whatever. I don't know how long this lasts, but it's definitely longer than that. Like you can probably clear like most of a legacy dungeon with this active, and then like by the time you get to a rest site, right, you can rest, get your flask back, and then pop it again and then continue on. Definitely long enough for like boss encounters, like from like what I've been testing and stuff. So really fun mechanic to use, and I think this is going to be a way to make some really interesting builds to play around with, like ways that you'll be able to parry attacks and follow up and still getting some of that defense, especially for say like high strength builds where say, you know, you've got like a ton of poise. You can sort of block attacks with this and then follow up with guard counters for tons of damage, and, you know, breaking stances and all that stuff to follow up with critical hits. A couple of like build ideas, or just like one build idea, I guess. Like this is the build that I've been running in this video. It's using a quality Milady, which the Milady weapon you can get at the very start of Castle Answer, so you don't have to fight any bosses or anything. Just past the the castle front side of Grace. If you basically go into the castle, wing a left and climb the watchtower, up the top there'll be a chest where you'll be able to get the milady. I'm using a wolf crest shield just because it looks cool, but any shield will do. This is one of the new shields in the DLC. I'm mostly wearing the Solitude set. That is one of the new sets as well. And for talismans, I'm using the Dragon Crest Great Shield just to block some of that damage that may come towards me. And then the Curved Sword Talisman to enhance my guard counters even further. I have been using the Two-Headed Turtle Talisman as well, which is like the more powerful version of the typical turtle talisman. Now this is a little tricky to get. Essentially, you have to like go south of Castle Ensis and follow like the path down into sort of the river and then go through like the poison swamp. There's a cave there. You follow that cave all the way through, you get to the other side, and then you go up the river, and then behind a waterfall here is where you'll actually be able to find this talisman. But essentially the normal one will do anyway, just to improve that stamina recovery from like blocking. You will go through your stamina very quickly, so having that option is really good. And then I did tinker with the dagger talisman to enhance critical hits a little bit as well, and there is a new talisman that buffs your attack power on critical hits as well. But I didn't find that I was doing a lot of critical hits because I was often killing enemies before it mattered just by doing guard counters. So you've got those options there, but then I mean you could switch to like the Great Shield Talisman as an alternative as well, right? That'll boost your guarding ability on top of that, or something else, or you can run something completely different. But that was sort of the general build feel that I had for this like setup. I do also have the Claw Mark Seal as well as a couple of spells like just a heal and Flame Grant Me Strength, as well as some of the bestial incantations to give me a little bit of ranged options so I could pull enemies towards me, because they have such a low investment in faith, right? Like if you look at my stats here, I've got 50 vigor, 30 mind, which I probably don't need 30 mind. You can probably lower that. I've got 40 endurance. I would probably bump that even higher just for that extra stamina, as well as so if you're following up with guard counters, etc. And then I've got 60 strength and dex, just even because I'm running a quality build. Obviously you can switch it up depending on what you're doing. And then 15 faith allows me to have the heal, Flame Grant Me Strength plus Stone of Garunk for the ranged options with this sort of general setup. But there are multiple of these Furnace Golems that do also drop other tiers as well. But this one I thought was the most exciting and fun to play around with. Plus you can get it like right at the start, as it is that first Furnace Golem you run into. But I do recommend that you defeat any of the ones you do come across, as they all do drop new crystal tiers. It's sort of the new way you get them, rather than like the minor Erdtrees that you would expect from say the base game. But they're all very different, right? This one is the most unique and the one that I wanted to call out here, but the others are very beneficial for any sort of different build setups that you may want to play around with if you do want to. I'd be really interested in the comments. Let me know if you are using this crystal tier and some like build ideas. I think I'm going to stick it on a big stick next and do some guard counters with that, maybe play around and see if I can make a build with it. But I do really like this overall general setup, and I'm really curious to know what you guys come up with if you have beaten this and played around with this new parry mechanic that is very reminiscent of, say, a Sekiro in Elden Ring in a way, in terms of a parry. It's different, right? It is different, but it's exciting to have a new gameplay mechanic that we can tinker with. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is NorZZa. I hope you have a great day.